Okay, so I ended with talking about these 5 essential nutrients that should be applied as a post-harvest that will greatly impact next year's crop. And so those 5 nutrients are nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, zinc, and boron. So let's dive in a little deeper to see why they're going to positively affect next year's crop if they're applied today. So nitrogen. Why is nitrogen important to be applied as a post-harvest? Well, it helps with the viability of buds coming out of dormancy. There's been many studies, UC studies, that prove this. They prove that specifically urea-based nitrogen has the highest impact on spring fruit set. The reason why urea-based nitrogen is because it has the best ability out of all the nitrogens to store within the plant. So you want to make sure when you're doing these applications that you're using a urea-based nitrogen, not another form of nitrogen, because you're going to get the best bang for your buck with the urea-based nitrogen because it stores the best. So that leads us into phosphorus. Why is phosphorus so important during this time? Well, phosphorus is important because right now during fall we are going through our secondary root flush. There's one in the spring, that's our first root flush. Now is our second root flush. So we would need phosphorus to help develop some of those roots during the secondary root flush before going into dormancy. And then we also need phosphorus to be stored within the plant because it is the energy driver for next year's crop for these plants to come out of dormancy. So you need adequate amount of phosphorus to keep that energy cycle going coming out of dormancy. There's been a few local studies here that I've seen, and what they did is they left phosphorus out of this application to see what would happen, and it negatively impacted next year's crop because it didn't have that energy coming out of dormancy. So phosphorus plays a key role in this. Make sure you're getting your phosphorus inputs. Potassium. Potassium can be a big contributor because it helps with water relations within the plant. So if you find yourself in a situation where you need some drought tolerance, there might be some frost damage coming up, and there's a threat of that, make sure you have enough adequate potassium within the plant because coming out in spring, it might be able to help with those drought situations or those frost situations. And it's good to have that stored in the plant before you come up to a situation where you need it. Rather than applying it then, you should have it stored in the plant now. So potassium plays a big role in that aspect coming out of dormancy in spring. Next, we hit our minors. So why are boron and zinc needed to be applied today for next year's crop? Well, the reason why boron is essential as a post-harvest application is because it also needs to be stored in the plant, and coming out of dormancy, it helps with the pollen tube formation. It's very hard to make up that boron in the spring and try to get it in time to help with pollen tube formation. That's something that you pretty much have to apply as a post-harvest. Need to have adequate boron in the plant as a post-harvest because by the time it's coming out, it's already being used. Trying to make that up in the spring, it's less likely to happen or to have as positive as an effect as it would if you were to apply it as a post-harvest. So making sure you have adequate boron within the plant already while it's going into dormancy is key for pollen tube formation. For seed set, helps deliver calcium to seeds, so or displace calcium into formation of seeds. So really, boron is your main contributor to your set for next year. So boron plays a huge role. Making sure you have adequate boron is key for next year's crop. The last nutrient that we have for today would be zinc. The reason why zinc is so important is because it helps with different chlorophyll formations and activity. It also helps with growth hormones. And lastly, it has a bunch of different functions for some different enzymes that positively affect set for the following year. What we need to realize with zinc is there's a lot of zinc deficiencies out there, especially in our area. We have a lot of zinc deficient orchards. Sometimes they're neglected and they're not really taken care of. So you need to apply a little more zinc for those zinc deficient orchards in order to be at an adequate level. There's been studies that show that zinc deficient orchards that are not being taken care of show many signs of production loss the next year compared to those who have adequate levels. So applying zinc is huge when it comes to that. So really, all in all, that wraps it up. I would say that adding all of these nutrients in there are absolutely essential. Making sure that they're in as a post-harvest is going to greatly benefit you more than it would if you put it in on a spring application. You want to make sure you have these nutrients ahead of time. They're stored in the plant and they're ready to roll coming out of dormancy. You don't want to play catch up. Adding applications in the spring is always suggested, but I think sometimes we underestimate how important this post-harvest application really is. That's it for the breakdown. I want to show you guys a quick trial that we did, a multi-year trial that we've done in our area with almonds, and that'll wrap it up. So after talking about the nutrients that are most important for post-harvest, I wanted to share this trial with you guys. This was done by a large distributor, by their tech team that I deal with. And the goal of this trial was to see the inputs that are applied during post-harvest, how they would affect next year's crop, and how it would affect it if we left some of those nutrients out that I talked about earlier. So what we did is we used a product called DiCap. That's our product. It's a potassium and phosphorus product. A triplex zinc, which is our zinc product, triplex boron, which is our boron product, and we put them all together with low biurea and wanted to see the outcomes. So you could see that there are 5 different treatments. We did a grower standard, one with just DiCap, another one with just DiCap and zinc, another one with DiCap, zinc and boron, and then the last one with triplex zinc and just boron. And we added low biurea to all of those. And so what you can see on this outcome is that when you add all of those nutrients that we went over together earlier, when you add all those together, you get the absolute best possible outcome. So DiCap, you can see it in orange, DiCap, triplex zinc, triplex boron with some low biurea turned out to be the most pounds per acre on a yield basis for the following year. You can see the grower standard there. Some of the other ones did decent. DiCap, triplex zinc helped. That was pretty close to the grower standard, but the one that sticks out the most is the DiCap, triplex zinc, triplex boron, which is now a product that we have called Banks. It is all of those mixed into one bag. So this just goes to show you that having those products all together, potassium, phosphorus, zinc, boron, and nitrogen is going to give you your best bet for return on investment and yield for next year. All right, everybody, that's all I have for my post-harvest segment. Hopefully you learned a thing or two. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.